Hey there guys, so today we have another review, and first off I'll be talking about beer karma, so if you want to skip into the review, skip ahead in the video. And so this beer is actually courtesy of R Street Beer Reviews, who did a trade with me, and most of the beer I traded was mine, but a couple of the cans were from Jeff, and I'll post a link to the video of my unpacking of his package, but he donated me some awesome beers. And almost all those beers I shared with friends. You know, I'm very happy to share those with friends, but a couple of them were repeat cans. And I wanted to maybe, trade them instead of having them myself. And so a couple of the cans were courtesy of Jeff. And so therefore, whenever someone sends me something, I'm very much obligated to review your beer. I mean, I hugely appreciate it. So because I did that trade, some of that beer, a couple of the cans were courtesy of Jeff. Therefore, I'm bringing you this review. So that huge shout out to Jeff for those couple cans, and huge shout out to R Street Beer Reviews for the trade, and therefore I'm bringing this review. So I hope that makes some sense in some weird way that Jeff donated to me beer, and then therefore I traded a couple of those cans, and then those beers were therefore necessarily need to be reviewed and not just shared off camera. That's my sense of beer karma. Let me know if you guys have any stories about beer karma. Talking about the beer, this is Fremont's Bourbon Barrel Aged Abominable Ale, their winter ale. They call it B-Bomb, 14%. It is a beer with 12 and 15-year-old American whiskey / bourbon barrels, blend of 1 and 2-year-old aged beer. So awesome stuff. They call it a winter ale. I would consider it somewhere in between kind of like strong ale, barley wine kind of thing. But as you see, the beer is pretty dark. It has a sort of brown hue to it, so it's probably more of a dark brown kind of color. But you can easily kind of like mistake it for a bourbon barrel aged stout or a stout. Wonderful kind of like light brown head on that. Yeah, medium brown head on that. But awesome stuff. Let's get to on this. Oh man, that's insane. Oh man, it's so rich and decadent. It's huge amounts of sweetness, tons of dark fruit. Again, I consider it more towards a barley wine. That's what's familiar with me. Like, I would associate this with the bourbon barrel aged barley wine, even more towards a Bourbon County Goosan barley wine. Oh man, sweet bourbon, toffee, caramel, rich sweet bourbon notes, dark fruit and like plums and bourbon soaked figs and dried dates. A little bit of like chocolate action. But yeah, it's that big kind of robust barrel-aged barley wine kind of note. A little bit of chocolate underlying it. Cheers. Oh, even with the burn, I don't care. It's so freaking delicious. A little bit of burn on the back end. Yeah, wow. But it's so decadent. 14%. Very drinkable for 14%. Yeah, I don't know about drinkable, but it drinks very well for 14%. It does have a little bit of burn on the back end. First thing you notice is the big sweetness. I'm going to say it again. Barley wine. Bourbon barrel aged barley wine. That kind of sweetness. Rich notes of like caramel, toffee, this kind of like intense maltiness that you get in barley wines. It almost has this fruitcake kind of thing, like a Christmas fruitcake. Those intense kind of like sweet raisiny notes, a little bit of like fig, like cooked fig, dried date kind of thing. A little bit of like, yeah, there you go. A little bit of like, not fully dried out raisin, a little bit of like juicy grape thing going on. So again, those dark fruits, a little bit of that sugary thing going on, a little bit of chocolate, cocoa kind of thing. Rich amounts of bourbon on the palate, like hits up front. It actually burns on the back of the palate as it goes down, little singe of heat. Oh. But that huge pop of sweetness and intense dark fruit, it's like a little bit of cherry note, raisins, huge bright / dark fruit notes. It's a huge amount of dark fruit. As you wait more, vanilla comes in, cocoa, dark chocolate. There's a little theme of oak coming in, again, that bourbon note. Flies off the palate very nicely, and the alcohol sort of hits the back of the palate, burns a little slightly on the back end. But again, it's 2015 vintage, so very fresh. Wow, amazing stuff. Yeah, this is amazing. As for their notes, they say bourbon, oak, certainly, cacao, again, despite this kind of like, I would call it more towards a strong ale / barley wine kind of thing, certainly get that little roasty kind of quality, leather and dark coffee. So the most relatable beer that I would compare this to would be a really good vintage of Bourbon County barley wine. Again, that's one of my favorites, and this one is the most comparable in the sense that you get a little bit of that Bourbon County stout kind of thing in Bourbon County barley wine because they use third use barrels. This one has that. It has a little bit of roast under it. Those dark fruit flavors are incredible. This is a crazy beer. I mean, Fremont is so underrated for their barrel program. It's one of my favorite barrel programs in the country. Get this, get Barrel Aged Dark Star, get their variants, get Brew 1000. They're just all like some of my favorite barrel aged beers in the country. So this beer is getting 100 minus out of 100. There you go, guys. 100 minus out of 100. 100 minus out of 100. Huge shout out to Fremont. This is incredible stuff. Please trade for their beers because they're so freaking good. Yeah, and thank you a lot to Jeff for being part of this trade, and thank you a lot to Our Street Beer Reviews for this beer. So until next time, guys, cheers. Later. Post comments below about what you think about Beer Karma. Later.